Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to you all. Now, today we are going to start on active and passive voice. Yesterday we left at subject word agreement. Today, hopefully, we are going to cover active and passive voice, sentence types, and paragraphs. And maybe we'll go into practical language and inclusive language. Um, Now, as you can see on the screen, active and passive voice. In the active voice, the subject of a sentence is the doer of the action. This means in active voice, the subject means the person doing the action. In any sentence, in any paragraph or any phrase, the subject will always be the person or the thing that is doing the action. So in active voice, the subject of the sentence is the person performing the action. Excuse me. For active sentences, follow the usual word order in your sentences: subject, verb, object. Your sentences will be more interesting and easier to understand. That means if you are using active voice, always use the usual word order. Word order means the way words are ordered in a sentence. Usually we use the subject, verb, object, SVO. In a sentence, first there will be the subject, followed by the verb object, followed by the verb, and then the object which the verb is referring to. So, in an active sentence, the word order is SVO, which is subject, verb, object. Your sentences will be more interesting and easier to understand. There are times when the passive voice is useful. Normally, in most of the types of writings which we use active voice. We'll go into some examples of active voice. Here are some sentences written in active voice. The new process is believed to be superior by the investigators. In this sentence, the subject is. We'll firstly just read through these examples and go into more details. The office will be inspected by John Rhodes from NYC. It is desired by by this office that the problem be brought before the board. Complete renovation was required by the new owners. The letter was typed by Brian, the new assistant. Verbs and voice. Now this is also under active and passive. We are going into some more details of this. Voice in this active and passive voice. So here the voice means it is the form of a verb that takes to indicate whether the subject of the verb performs or receives the action. That is indicated as the voice. There are two types of voice we have been talking about, active and passive voice. Active voice is used to show the subject of the sentence is performing or causing the action. Previously we have discussed this. For example, LeBron threw the ball before the buzzer. In this sentence, LeBron is the subject and threw the basketball. Threw is the action verb, and the basketball before the buzzer. Object will be basketball. So therefore, what is the word order which is normally used in active voice? SVO, subject, verb, object. In this sentence, LeBron is the subject, threw is the verb, the action verb, and the object is the basketball, because through is the action and through this verb is referred to is the action, so the object will always be defined by the verb. Therefore object is basketball. LeBron threw the basketball before the buzzer. So the subject of the sentence is performing the action as written in the definition above. LeBron shot the basketball from the free throw line. LeBron scored 3 points. So in the examples below, LeBron is the person, the subject who is performing, doing the action. So therefore, these are some examples of active voice sentences. Next is passive. Many government documents and policies of large organizations use the passive voice, which sounds quite impersonal. Talking directly to your readers with words like I, you, we, us, our makes your document more personal. Rather than the client can make application to the Department of Motor Vehicles of licensing before June. This is an example. Rather than writing this sentence, the client make applications to the Department of Motor Vehicles for licensing before June 1. Rather than writing like that, we can write, you can apply to the Department of Motor Vehicles for your licensing before June 1st. There you can see a difference. Before it was written as the client can make application to the Department of Motor Vehicles for licensing before June. That is an a different way which you can, rather than writing like that, you can say you can apply to the department. Now when you change it like that, this is a written form, so when the reader feels more connected with and it will be easier to understand when you use passive voice in some cases. All right. There are times when passive voice is useful. When would you want to use passive voice? There are different ways and different times where you have to or you can use passive voice. For example, when you must deliver a bad news. For example, the decision to terminate your lease was agreed upon all members of the committee. Or you can use passive voice to when the subject is not important, when the subject in the sentence is not important, or you don't know the subject. For example, in a sentence or in some cases where you don't know the exact context where the sentence is applied on, you might not know the subject who is performing the action. You might not be informed of that in one sentence because maybe that sentence was extracted from a large paragraph or maybe a book. So we don't know the context, we might not know the subject. Then in that case you can use passive voice. For example, the children were delighted by the sudden appearance of a clown. In this sentence, we don't know exactly which one is the subject, children or clown. And also in this sentence, children means many, so it's not specific. Next, you can use passive voice when you are not sure who or what is responsible for an action. When you are not sure of who or what is responsible for an action. Their house was broken into last night. For example, their house was broken into last night. We don't know in this sentence, we don't know who broke into their house. So, in cases like this, you can use passive voice. Another way you can use passive voice is when you want to focus attention on the action, not the doer of the action. When you want to focus attention on the action, not the subject, the action verb. Action is in the sense the verb of the sentence, the action verb, and not the subject. For example, when harvest time approaches, the potato plants are sprayed with a chemical to keep them from sprouting. In this sentence, they want to the person, the maybe the author wanted to focus on the action and not the person doing the action, which is uh, in this sentence the action will be spraying the chemicals, but the person it does not mention about this subject, the person who is doing this action. The sentence wants to focus the attention on spraying chemicals to keep them the reason to keep them from sprouting. Therefore, it's written as when harvest time approaches, the potato plants are sprayed with chemical to keep them from sprouting. Um, Now on the screen you can see some similar points. When intentionally trying to hide the subject and the sentence. This is one reason. I think we have gone through all of this. This is one reason where One way which you can use passive voice, for example, a politician might say, the mistake was made by someone. Hiding the subject helps him or her hide the blame. The mistake was made by someone. When we say someone, it's general. We don't know who the subject is specifically. So, in cases like this, you can use passive voice. When intentionally trying to minimize the guilt of subject, for example, a cheating boyfriend might say, cheating was committed by me. When intentionally trying to minimize the guilt of the subject means the person doing the action. So that person in this sentence is accepting his mistake. Third, when passive voice better emphasizes the main point of the message, such as children were harmed by the drunk driver. Forms of passive voice verbs. Before going into that, we'll go back to some sentences. Yeah, we saw this slide before. Now here you are seeing the original sentences which have not been changed to active voice. Now we are going to think and then discuss, see how these sentences will be written when changed to active voice. First is the new process is believed to be superior by the investigators. When this sentence is rewritten, now before I actually give the answers, I want you to try on your own to see how you can change this sentence to active voice. I will be sending activities as soon as possible, hopefully by the end of today. Notes and handouts for yesterday's and today's lessons. Alright, now let's see the first sentence. The new process is believed to be superior by the investigators. When this sentence is rewritten in active voice, you can say the investigators think the new process is superior. Because in the original sentence also the subject is investigators, that is the person doing the action. And in this sentence, what can be the verb, action verb? The investigators think. In this case, think is the verb and object is the new process is superior. Okay, so when it's rewritten, it will be the investigators think the new process is superior. Next, the office will be inspected by John Rhodes from NYC. To change this sentence, we can say, of course, John Rhodes will be the subject John Rhodes from NYC will inspect the office. When the second sentence is rewritten in active voice, it will be written as John Rhodes from NYC will inspect the office. Next, it is desired by this office that the problem be brought before the board. To change this sentence to active voice, we can say, this office wants the problem brought before the board. Next is a complete renovation was required by the new owners. To rewrite this sentence in active voice, it can be as this office won't. The new owners required a complete renovation. Last, the letter was typed by Brian, the new assistant. We can rewrite it as Brian, the new assistant, typed the letter. So you can notice in all these sentences, when we change all of these sentences to active voice, the subject always comes to the front. The word order for active voice is subject, verb, object. Alright, moving on. Why does it matter? Remember yesterday we talked about the 4 C's of writing, and in that we talked about writing concisely, concise writing, which means shortening. So on the previous slide it says, why does it matter? Strong writing uses active voice. So previously, as I mentioned, we normally use in almost all kinds of writings, we usually use active voice, and there are few few situations where we use passive voice. Now we use active voice because it gives strong impression on the reader. It gives a strong impression towards your writing. For example, here it says active voice is more direct and concise. When you write in active voice, it says exactly what you want to say in short words, using less words. Passive voice is usually wordier. For example, the ball was thrown by Mohammed. That is a passive voice. When we say it in active voice, Mohammed threw the ball. That's it. So when you think, also you'll notice passive voice sentences are usually longer. Muhammad, the ball was thrown by Muhammad. We can shorten it simply by saying Muhammad threw the ball. Active voice is like watching LeBron play. Passive voice is like watching gum stuck on the bleachers in the stands. Therefore, most of the time in most of your writings, you want to use active voice. The passive voice requires a double verb and will always consist of a form of the verb. The passive voice requires a double verb and will always consist of a form of the verb to be and the past participle, usually an ed or t form of another verb. Here it says that the verbs in a passive voice form will usually need a form of the verb or tense to be and the past participle. That is usually the verbs ends in n or ed. For example, active John baked the bread. Passive, the bread was baked by John. Was is a form of verb be or to be. That means past. Here in above form of the verb to be means past tense. Alright, and the past participle. Past or past participle is usually used in passive voice. As you can see in the example, the bread was baked by John. The sentence was is a form of the verb be or to be. Writers should be familiar with the forms of to be, often called linking verbs, so that they can easily identify the passive voice in their work. These are some words of the forms of to be. Am is was, were, be, being, and been. Note the forms of to be in the examples of the verb to kick in various forms of passive voice. Is kicked, had been kicked, was kicked, is going to be kicked. Now these are some examples of verbs being changed into passive voice verbs. Is being kicked, will be kicked. Has been kicked will be changed to can be kicked. Was being kicked will be changed to should be kicked. Now, it's not necessary that you have to learn a verb list like this, but when you start writing these things, these changes, it will come to you automatically. Forms of passive voice verbs. Here is an example. Passive, the cookies were eaten by the children. So in the passive form also we are using the past tense. The cookies were eaten. That means it's already done. I mean the action is already finished. The active form of the sentence, the children ate the cookies. So in the active voice we are using the verb form ate, which is simple past tense. In the passive form we are using past participle were eaten. The tunnels are dug by gophers. Active voice. The gophers dug the tunnels. Okay. All right. I hope you have a general idea of active and passive voice, verbs, and how to use them. Now, next is sentence types. We'll go into more details of sentence types and we'll look at examples in tomorrow's class. But today we'll just go through the types. There are four types of sentences. Simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Simple sentences means, and then before going into sentence types, you should be familiar with clauses. What are clauses? We'll be looking into that also in tomorrow's class. All right. So for today, we'll once again go through what we discussed today. Active voice. Active voice is used to show the subject of In the active voice, the subject of sentence is the doer of the action. For active sentences, follow the usual word order, which is SVO. Subject, verb, object. First comes the subject and verb and then the object. Your sentence will be more interesting and more readable and understandable when you write in this way. And as previously discussed, we normally use active voice in um, almost all of our writings, and there are few situations where we use passive voice. And then passive voice is used when the subject is the recipient of the action. And also keep in mind, using passive voice is always wordier and it is lengthier. When it comes to passive voice, the sentences are longer than active voice. And that is also one of the reasons why we use active voice rather than passive voice. Alright, so we will call it today and continue the sentence types and paragraph types in tomorrow's class. And hopefully, I will send activities, handouts, and other worksheets by the end of today. Alright, so we'll see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Alright.